Many people say data is the new oil, the oil of the 21st century. And I think it's a good analogy because if you think about how oil has transformed our lives, data is going to do the same thing. But if you don't have the data, you don't have the oil. Unfortunately, there is a big tension between big data and privacy. There's a huge amount of data being created that contains personal information. The question is, well, how should that data be used? How should it be protected? Who has control over it? Who owns it? And I think it's important that we get that right.
Das wird der Knoten meines Lebens. Ich sag's euch. Ich meine, ich persönlich, wenn ich da als Minister sitzen würde, würde ich auch jemandem zuhören, der keine Krawatte trägt. Aber es geht ja jetzt hier nicht darum, sie vom Gegenteil zu überzeugen, sondern davon, dass sie eine Datenschutzverordnung verabschieden sollen. Das müssen wir nochmal machen.
A statement on today's agenda regarding data protection?
Also, I will do it first in German and then the same thing in English. Jetzt muss der Rat dasselbe machen, was das Parlament schon gemacht hat. Nämlich eine politische Einigung bringen. Über jedes Komma und jeden Ausrufungszeichen kann man sich nicht einigen. Aber politisch müssen die Minister das endlich in die Hand nehmen. 2 Jahre liegt das auf dem Tisch. Es wird höchste Zeit, dass wir jetzt agieren. So, now in English. Are they ready? Jasmina. Who raised this? Journalists? Oh, Lorenzo. Yeah. It's Martin. Martin? Wait. Okay. Okay, perfect. I think we can go. Yeah, we can go. Yeah. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the citizens are very worried. 72% of European citizens are concerned that their personal data may be misused. Our reform will assure a high protection to the individuals. A single set of European rules on data protection, fit for the digital age, valid everywhere across the European Union, on the basis that the personal data belongs to the person.
When I became Commissioner for Justice and responsible for the protection of the citizens, I knew at that moment I had to reform the data protection rules. Without trust, no digital economy. So it is in the own interest of the politicians who want to develop our economy and of the industry who wants to take advantage of the personal data of the individuals, that clear rules are established so that citizens know, all right, I can hand out my data. That is exactly what we need. Because in this new digital world, no service can function without the data. The data are needed.
Our reform is now on the table of the ministers and of the European Parliament. And our lawmakers have to see if what I put on the table has to stay as it is, if it has to be enhanced, or if it has to be, by them, watered down. No, I am in his hands. D'abord les Français. Bon. Les données personnelles appartiennent à la personne.
We're talking about the new data protection rules today. Tell me just very broadly and give us an idea, what's going to change?
The truth is, this proposal covers the entire economy. It is not only about the search engines or social networks or security companies or IT. It's about finance, it's about retail, it's about transport. It's the way all companies collect, process, manage personal data. So everybody is affected. The doctor in your street will be affected.
The Commission has done actually a very, very good effort in presenting us a solid package. But of course, the challenge we're facing is to square the circle between legitimate interests of citizens and not to hamper business and innovation.
It's a very, very important package for the European citizen, and in more general terms, we try to safeguard the fundamental right to data protection through this reform.
The final result should be a very high level of data protection, but it should be in combination with very tough sanctions.
So first I will give the floor to Mr. Tavares and then Mrs. Weber. Mr. Tavares.
Thank you very much, Mrs. President.
And now we go to the last point on our agenda for this afternoon. Is the consideration of a working document drafted in the framework.
Die Welt hat sich verändert. Wir leben in einer Welt, in der die Leute viel mehr Informationen preisgeben, gerade in sozialen Netzwerken. Nur wohin führt das, wenn ich diese technischen Möglichkeiten komplett ausnutze? Letztendlich dazu, dass ich ständig eine Nummer auf meiner Stirn trage und alle immer wissen, wo ich bin und das abrufen können, was ich denke und was ich vielleicht bestimmten Leuten sage. Das ist für mich so eine Horrorvorstellung. Deswegen glaube ich, dass es heute viel dringender als je zuvor ist, dass wir uns darüber Gedanken machen, wie soll eigentlich Datenschutz und Privatsphäre, wie soll Selbstbestimmung im digitalisierten Zeitalter überhaupt noch funktionieren? Wie kann das überhaupt noch da sein?
Ralf? Ralf? Ist nicht da. Wo ist denn?
Sitzen zwei Typen in einer Bar, am Nachbartisch eine schöne Frau. Und der eine so, hey, willst du die mal kennenlernen? Ich weiß ein paar Sachen über die. Die ist irgendwie Opernsängerin, trinkt gerne italienischen Rotwein, ist vor 3 Wochen aus einer Beziehung raus und sucht gerade Trost, kommt da und daher und steht auf Rosen oder sonst was. Ne? Und der andere so, ist ja voll krass so, super hilfreich, danke. Weißt du auch noch, wie die heißt? Nee, das sind personenbezogene Informationen, die kann ich dir nicht geben. So.
Aber ich meine, auf der anderen Seite, in einer gewissen Art und Weise, könnte das ja dann immer noch, also es können immer noch unglaublich viele unterschiedliche Personen sein, auf die diese Beschreibung zutrifft.
Wenn die mir einen Cookie auf meine Festplatte tun und mich irgendwie über diverse Webseiten tracken und ein Profil anlegen über mich und so, und entsprechend Werbung einblenden, dann geht es um mich. Die bilden ein Profil von mir und machen dann welche Sachen damit.
Und was willst du, eine Klarstellung in die andere Richtung? Oder?
Eigentlich schon.
Aha.
Weil sonst haben wir kriegen wir die ganze Werbe-Marketing-Tracking-Pest nicht in den Griff mit dem Ding. Ne?
Jetzt gehen wir mal durch, was wir bisher...
Am Anfang mussten wir in meinem Büro erstmal klären, was wollen wir überhaupt machen bei dieser Datenschutzreform. Wir sind halt eher so die Bürgerrechtler, die halt hier im Europäischen Parlament nicht unbedingt eine Mehrheit haben. Und dann saßen wir natürlich erstmal noch mal ein paar Tage zusammen und haben uns überlegt, können wir das überhaupt? Schaffen wir das? Und letztendlich haben wir dann gemerkt, also alle Leute kochen nur mit Wasser hier. Und die anderen Abgeordneten haben auch nicht viel mehr Mitarbeiter und viel mehr Ressourcen. Und wahrscheinlich haben wir sogar mehr Ahnung, um es mal vorsichtig zu sagen, von der Materie als die anderen, die es machen könnten. Also machen wir es. Und dann mit ganz knapper Mehrheit habe ich dann den Bericht bekommen.
The Parliament nominates a rapporteur. That is a person who, in the name of the Parliament, analyzes the text together with members of other political parties and makes a proposal to the plenary of the Parliament for the vote. So the rapporteur is an extraordinarily important figure.
Okay, that's true. Yeah. Do you want to sit? Because the problem is that otherwise people have to turn to speak.
Jemand von der Kommission hat mir gesagt, naja, wenn du tatsächlich Berichterstatter wirst, dann solltest du dir vielleicht Personenschutz besorgen. Weil es halt einfach super viele Leute gibt, die ja, halt das Gefühl haben, ich wäre eine Gefahr.
So please just join us here, so you can sit there, so don't feel to be in a courtroom.
Hier, das ist ein Hammer.
When I heard Mr. Albrecht was the rapporteur, I was disappointed. Based on his party affiliation, where he's from, and his age, that suggested that most of the emphasis will be on personal privacy with not much consideration to the advantages of the use of data. So it was sort of like, oh, this is going to make it harder for business to get their point across.
C'est pas les bagages.
It's a very interesting and profitable moment for somebody that is specialized in ICT and data protection law. So the time is now. I mean, it's not something that will last for more than 2-3 years. So therefore, I wake up early in the morning and fly into Brussels and go back at night with a kid waiting for me at home and a wife. But I think it's you need to do sacrifice to achieve what you want to do. It's all about data now. Our life is about data. Collecting or giving it away. Data are money. C'est combien, monsieur?
Oui, voilà, ici.
Ouais.
I'll let you know well in advance so we can organize a meeting also with your colleagues and we'll run a little presentation. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Very good to meet you. Yeah.
The regulation have been out for 1 week. We all need to dig into it, to think about it, to ponderate on the impact of this regulation. And most
On
of
the
all,
scene
on
in
the
this moment, you have a lot of players trying to influence the reform process. So if you have the regulators on one side and you have companies on the other side, then in between you have a lot of entities that are making the two words communicating.
As you know, 50 years ago we wouldn't be discussing this at all, but now that the whole social network, e-commerce, etc., is taking off big time, the European Parliament and its members are serious about trying to get it right, and that is why we need the input from basically the stakeholders and take your views on board. Getting it right.
We need to create a legal framework that will enable more business and will enable companies to innovate and to provide more services and to provide services to the last price or possibly for free. And if you want to do that, there is a price to pay. And the currency for those services are personal data.
Okay, so we are back to the meeting and we welcome our guests. Thank you for coming here, Peter Hastings and Giovanni Buttarelli. So the word is yours, Peter. Thank you very much.
There is an important point in the very beginning. This is a huge opportunity to make data protection in Europe stronger, more comprehensive and more consistent. That is, improve, strengthen. The concept of personal data is built on the idea, what is identification? Yahoo and Google, but in fact anybody else might say, oh, we just take out a name and then we call it anonymous, but that, of course, it's much more complicated than that. So a word of caution there.
What is the difference between identification and singling out? If you can say, I can see data of Oyster card holders on the London Underground who hold on these prepayment cards, and I can single out the fact that passenger A is distinct from passenger B. So I can single out that there are lots of different people, but I can't identify any of them.
Now, in real life, in a classroom, the boy with the dark hair, curls, and the blue trouser, please leave the room. Then everybody knows who it is. This singling out refers to the capacity of providers on the internet they're able to use the well-known attributes of this single user by nudging someone into behavior. That's effective advertising. They say, we don't know who this is. It's anonymous. No. The point is, it is personal data, without any doubt. And that message is, of course, not very welcome for some big stakeholders.
Data is everywhere. And our position is this is a good thing. We have the potential very much to create a better world for ourselves. It sounds too good to be true, but I truly believe that the appropriate use of data will make the world a better place. Will environmental sustainability, disease prevention, better, more efficient commerce, all can come about because the answer's there. The answer's in the data. We worked with the Atlanta Public Schools and determined that the best indicator of graduation from high school was not whether your parents were rich, not whether you had internet at home, but it was whether you took creative writing in the 9th grade.
Oh, wow.
Because if you took creative writing in the 9th grade, for some reason, and we don't know why, you passed algebra in the 10th grade. And if you passed algebra in the 10th grade, your chances of graduating from high school were much better.
So that's why my maths was never very good.
No one would have ever figured that out. Those, while you would think would be the indicators, they were not. And I hate to see us legislate out of fear. I think we clearly need to legislate against the misuse of these tools, but to legislate out of fear of the unknown breaks my heart.
There's another dimension when you look at the use of the most recent election in the United States. I mean, they had a big team on the Obama campaign, which did nothing else than data analysis, data mining, understanding what is going on, how they can target the Spanish voters, how they can target the African-American voters in a particular town. When you look at this from a Euro point of view, where we have so many difficulties sometimes in European election, where we're losing voters and many not participating, I mean, what is actually so bad about this?
So we have in 73 the possibility for reorganization and association.
We go to 78, the penalties.
If you are a company that has a massive data breach because of some hacker attack,
in the majority of the case, you will be responsible if your security is not good enough.
I'm missing a little bit also the factor of the size of the company.
If you look at the other provision, we refer to the annual worldwide turnover.
2% for some very large companies. I'm not here to bat on their behalf, but it could be near $1 billion, possibly. So would you not consider putting a maximum fine in fairness for any breach?
What would be the maximum then?
I'm not sure whether it's relevant, but whom these fines are paid to? I mean, who is going to take that money? The member state, I don't know.
It's a good question, I agree.
Manchmal fühlt man sich hier im Europäischen Parlament wie aus so einem Riesentanker. Und niemand hat irgendwie das Steuer in der Hand, sondern alle versuchen eben diesen Tanker nur durch Gewichtsverlagerung zu lenken. Und ich fühle mich dann manchmal so, wie als würde ich halt rumlaufen auf dem Deck dieses Tankers und alle davon überzeugen, lass uns mal bitte alle auf die linke oder eben auf die rechte Seite gehen, bis es dann irgendwann dazu kommt, dass das Schiff sich vielleicht bewegt. Und selbst dann, weil man auf weiter See ist, weiß man oft gar nicht, ob man wirklich schon dabei ist, in eine Richtung zu fahren und sich immer fragt, wo steht man eigentlich gerade.
We'll do that. Okay, thank you. Take care.
Hello.
My favorite rapporteur.
Thank you.
Also das Programm, was ihr da aufgestellt habt, das ist hervorragend.
Ja.
Ist sehr gut.
Nee, es war auch heute Vormittag war es wirklich gut. Also wir hatten viele nationale Parlamentarier zusammen und die waren wirklich alle sehr interessiert. Wir haben sehr substantiert sich damit auseinandergesetzt. Insofern glaube ich, das läuft schon in eine ganz gute Richtung.
Mach's gut, ja?
Ich glaube, wir treffen uns jetzt noch kurz.
Ah ja. Wo?
Genau.
Wo?
Hier unten,
Where do we meet?
Ich glaube, it's going one down.
Yeah?
Or one up.
Is
We
it
just
down?
go
It's
one
going
down
down?
and then to the other side. Then it's 5. Then we need to go up to, it's the same, just 2 up. We can take the elevator or the steps.
This one?
Yeah.
68.
We will
Yeah.
have it end of February at the moment.
That
But
is
we'll
fine.
try still to vote in end of April then, so that we can
The
start.
European Commission is the go-between because we cannot have a law if the Council and the Parliament don't agree. The parliamentarians from different political parties, from different member states, they sit together continuously, week per week per week. So the Parliament is a real European-minded Parliament. In Council, the ministers meet 2 or 3 times per year. During the rest of the year, they are sitting in their member states. They are listening to their national administration. They have very little links, some of those, with Europe at all, and they are thinking just about domestic questions. They very rarely have the common interest of Europe in their mind. So, colleagues, you see there is still a lot of work in the pipeline. You ministers need to tell me which specific provisions are a problem, and then we will find solutions, point by point. And I'm confident that we can find a good compromise.
I w szczególności akceptujemy sytuację jednolitości regulacji, to znaczy braku podziału na sektor prywatny i sektor publiczny.
In Estonia, we are far from being convinced that the draft regulation, as it stands now, provides for sufficient flexibility.
Om byrderne i tilstrækkelig grad opvejes af fordele for den registrerede.
Številne druge pridržke, ki so jih izpostavile že druge delegacije, Švedska, Madžarska, Češka, Danska, Nemčija, Združeno kraljestvo, bodo vse zakonodajne rešitve ustrezno premišljene in pretehtane. Hvala.
This is not simply a law enforcement matter, and it's not simply a matter of civil rights. It is also a matter of ensuring that we do not impose a burden on European business that causes jobs to leave the European Union. And if the impact in the United Kingdom is one where we will see an extra £200 to £300 million on business, costs for business, that will mean less employment, less opportunity to develop and invest in the UK economy, the same will be true of my colleagues around Europe, and none of us can afford to do that.
Okay, so.
Yes. Do you want? No, you.
Okay.
Start.
Well, I first of all want to thank you for letting us have the opportunity to meet you. We're in 20 countries over Europe, and
Headquarter in Sweden.
We're listed in the Swedish Stock Exchange.
So your clients, in that sense, are banks?
No, our clients would be anyone who does credit sales. Yeah. There are different views at looking at this data protection regulation. Looking at it from the perspective of the Googles and the Facebooks of the world, the more advertising combining data for those purposes.
Also, don't worry.
That is not our perspective. We have the perspective from a more financial perspective. How do we help our clients extending credits to consumers? In a healthy way. If a company doesn't have any record of you as a consumer, it will be very difficult to extend a credit. And credits are it's a normal thing in any functioning economy. And for that we need the right data. We need good quality data, and we need data all over Europe. Of course.
Some of our members have 90% of their income, not profit, income, from outside the European Union. So if they commit a data breach in Europe, why should they be penalised based on worldwide turnover? Maybe think about fining them in relation to the income they generate in Europe. We'll be in touch.
Okay.
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 Working with a wider range of financial services interests as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Und haben die Lobbyisten jetzt auch Einfluss, oder?
Sie machen jetzt halt so PR.
indem sie Studien verabschieden, indem sie sagen, ja, wenn die Vorschläge so durchkommen, wie ich das will, sozusagen, dann kostet das irgendwie Milliarden von Euros und wird das Wachstum schwächen und so. Aber es gibt auch ein paar Unternehmensverbände, die jetzt auch schon sagen, pass auf, wir müssen uns jetzt dafür einsetzen, dass diese Regeln kommen, weil die Leute dem Ganzen nicht mehr trauen, so, weil dann niemand mehr irgendwas kauft, quasi.
Und wer hat da schon an deine Tür geklopft?
Von welcher Seite meinst du jetzt?
Egal von welcher.
Naja, alle.
Alle?
Alle klopfen da immer an meine Tür. So sieht's aus.
Die Lobby machen im Europäischen Parlament oder in Brüssel generell, sind zu 99% Unternehmen. Das ist schön und gut, die haben alle Interessen, aber wir Abgeordnete, wir bringen die Perspektive vieler, vieler Menschen in Europa mit. Und diese Menschen haben auch ihre Interessen. Und niemand soll das Gefühl haben, dass seine Interessen sozusagen höher stehen als die der Bevölkerung. Das geht nicht. Ja.
I was for a while a banking lawyer. My specialization was data processing. I really tried my best, 1 year or more. I was earning this money, I was doing this job, and I felt incredibly depressed. In my head, there was some kind of idea that being a lawyer can mean something beautiful. As a person that represents a cause. So it was simply like slowly coming to realize that there was some mistake in my own development that I would like to correct.
Hello. I'm Kasia from Poland, from African Foundation.
There are people who are open for dialogue, which is always good, but who have very strong ear for industry. So my mission is to get engaged more people and hopefully find somebody who will be willing to take up civil rights as their agenda.
What we've got now is we've got police authorities lobbying against certain aspects of it. We've got the online companies like Google and Microsoft and so on lobbying against certain parts of it. We've got the medical industry lobbying on it. We've got
Everybody basically.
And on the other side from the police authorities is us. On the other side from the Googles and Microsoft of the world are us.
It may take a year or more. I mean, the whole discussion in the parliament.
It's going to take a long time, but the way of being effective in Brussels is being there early.
Yeah.
We need to keep track of everything that's happening in Brussels and attend all of the meetings and speak at all of the events. The citizens haven't quite yet grasped how big the issue is and what's happening on a Brussels level and why it's important. And even we are still learning about the scale of the problem. People will realize how important this process is in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, but then the process will have passed.
mam prawo do strajku w obronie...
Wszystko jest na plusiku. A nie wszystko, sorry. Od 6.
Czekajcie, to jest 6F, tak? Dokończone. Tak to się zaczyna.
Or by the third party or parties to whom data are disclosed. W ogóle co?
To nie wiem, natomiast
bullshit, moim zdaniem.
to jest po francusku, ale tutaj jest o tych. Nie wiem, czy też po francusku. Więc teraz to, co komisja przygotowała, to tak naprawdę z tych dwóch propozycji jest dla mnie najlepsze, tak? Znaczy
Dokładnie. I my w ogóle mówimy, że to jest za mało. My byśmy w ogóle chcieli widzieć ją wcześniej, to jest raz, ale już to powiedzmy odpuściliśmy, no bo wiemy, że to jest radykalne. I mówimy, że za mało jest tych przesłanek, tak? Tylko mówię o tym, że tak naprawdę to, co komisja napisała, jest super łagodne. Bo w ogóle nie dotyka tego, co firmy robią, czyli data mining, tak? Nie ogranicza wcale.
Czemu oni tak płaczą?
Chcieliśmy jeszcze tutaj prawo do informacji, zakaz dyskryminacji bardzo twardy, różne rzeczy chcieliśmy pododawać, tak? Chodzi o to, że gdzie jakaś decyzja zapada na podstawie tego profilowania, a nigdzie dokonuje się tylko ta czynność, bo ta czynność jest oczywista, że się dokonuje cały czas i to jest dla mnie zwykłe data processing, tak? Nieograniczone tutaj.
Jest automatyczne profilowanie, czyli w ogóle nawet nie to, że ktoś usiadł i tamten, tylko
Nie analityk to robi, tylko komputer, dokładnie. Będzie, że każdy człowiek powinien mieć prawo dostępu do tych samych reklam, tak? No ja myślę, że wszystkie te mity od, wiesz, półcybuta do milionera by nie zadziałały, gdyby ludzie nie marzyli, tak? Znaczy, gdyby było tak, że od małego, aha, laska z Polski, kraj rozwijający się, dobra,
garnki,
mała miejscowość, dobra, no to od razu damy jej.
W proszku.
Dokładnie, tak? Co to będziemy ją patować z tymi czerwonymi szpilkami, tak nie kupi, tak? Politicians ask me question like, okay, but what's the harm of the data flowing? What's the harm for people that, you know, like, where's the dead body? And I was like, you are seriously starting conversation with this? So there is no longer the right to protect data. There is no longer the value of protecting data. There has to be a reason, and I'm, as a citizen, supposed to give you this reason. I really don't want the conversation to go there, to go into, balancing where is the biggest harm in industry not having money. So that should be on one side, and on the other hand should be what, like my harm of being discriminated. How you calculate this, or my harm in being manipulated, or maybe my harm in my life being a product of somebody's profiling me from my early years. These are abstract things, and if we lose this perspective of fundamental rights, we lose the game. I think if we go there, it's a lost case.
Mr. Baldoni, I would like to start by reacting to something you said, and it's often mentioned that personal data are the money of the digital economy. Well, what is happening today, and what the regulation is, future regulation would like to address, is that people are simply taking money from your pocket without asking for your consent, without letting you know how much you pay, and where the money goes to. So if that's the example, that's the problem too. So consent is a core issue.
I try to turn the question, or let's say, to have the discussion from a very practical point of view. How difficult or how easy is to get consent from a user? I'm a business lawyer, and hardly enough, I have to say that consent is one of the easiest things to get on the internet.
When you are purchasing a ticket to fly somewhere, if you do it if you purchase this ticket on a time pressure, or just because you are excited and you want to have that price, then you won't even read what you are consenting about. So what is the value of consent? We need to operate a shift. Somebody needs to take care of privacy and data protection, and this somebody is not a data subject because does not know anything, does not have time, is not interested. So if consent is a barrier, and consent is not per se a guarantee of data protection, then it's better to look somewhere else. We need to acknowledge that it's not anymore the action of an individual deciding for data protection. This is about technology. This is about machine interacting one to the other. So I think that should be the shift in a way of thinking about the reform. And I personally don't see it in where we are now.
Ci sono, sì, ci sono, dimmi pure. Sì, no, facciamo, vabbè, facciamo.
Warum, wenn ich das Privacy by Design verletze, dann werde ich mit der härtesten Strafe bestraft?
So schlägt die Kommission vor.
Warum?
Naja, wenn du das nicht berücksichtigst, heißt es halt, du hast beim Design deines ganzen Systems geschludert und viel mehr Daten erfasst als nötig.
Ehrlich gesagt, ich bin immer noch der Meinung, dass man einfach sagt, the supervisory authority may impose a fine that shall not exceed 1 million or in case of a legal person 2% of its annual worldwide turnover.
Und den ganzen Rest weg.
I would, you know what, I mean, I understand that you have that tendency, but I think in terms of negotiations, and there's also people out there that want to weaken the whole regime. It's better to leave a little bit more text now and then compromise on it later, as you have to.
Then we are done with that. Okay?
Jo.
Good.
Läuft.
So. Each supervisory authority shall exercise, is competent to supervise all data processing operations on the territory. Hä?
Das ist von EDPS, von letzter Woche.
Das ist ja schön, ich muss es trotzdem verstehen und gut finden.
Also ich bin sozusagen zuständig dafür, auch wenn deutsche Daten in Frankreich verarbeitet werden, aber ich darf natürlich in Frankreich nicht irgendwie reinmarschieren und Rechner beschlagnahmen oder so.
Okay, the powers of the supervisory authority shall be limited to the territory of its own member state. Or where personal data of residents of that member states are processed. Ohne without in the scope. Ist doch Quatsch.
Ja. Okay.
Also der Stadt dem, genau. So sieht das doch viel sauberer aus.
You can do that, that's fine, but you can also, if you don't want to draw too much attention to it, delete representing that data subject.
Right.
Ja, elegant.
We solve it.
You're such a low hacker.
Es wird uns natürlich sowieso alles wieder zerschossen, also wir erfreuen uns wie Tage daran, dass das so schön aussieht.
Deswegen habe ich gestern auch bei dir auf Facebook geantwortet, Peak Privacy. Das ist jetzt so besser als diese Woche, wird es nie mehr werden.
Nie mehr.
Ne? Das ist echt klar. Die Schattenberichterstatter der anderen Fraktionen werden gucken, gibt das ungefähr das wieder, was sie mit uns diskutiert haben? Oder ist es komplett verzerrt oder so? Entsprechend werden sie sagen, ja, ist ja super und so. Ne? Oder sie sagen, aber an dem Punkt sehen wir das ja doch anders. Muss man halt sehen. Und alle, die halt außerhalb des Parlaments an dem Thema dran sind, werden halt gucken, okay, was haben die denn jetzt ausgeheckt das letzte halbe Jahr? Ne? Und wo müssen wir noch mehr Lobbyaktivitäten entfalten oder sowas. Das gehört natürlich dazu. Klar. Wenn das am 3. Januar online gehen soll, dann musst du mit einem starken Statement da rausgehen und eine Pressekonferenz machen. Wir müssen dazu was sagen. Und zwar richtig, ne, so, hier ist das Ding, das ist voll das Geist. Das ist viel zu spät. Wenn das Ding am 3. rauskommt und du nichts dazu sagst, dann wird uns das innerhalb von 2 Tagen komplett in der Luft zerrissen von den ganzen Lobbyisten und wir haben keine Kontrolle über die Berichterstattung.
Ich dachte, die Leute sollen es erstmal lesen.
Also das wird innerhalb von ein paar Stunden komplett die Runde machen und dann ist es öffentlich. Und dann brechen alle ihren Urlaub ab und gucken da rein.
We are here, of course, today to take an important next step in formulating data protection in Europe, at the same time strengthening trust and innovation in the European digital market. And therefore, my report proposes the following 10 clarifications to the Commission's proposal. First of all, data protection is a fundamental right. If you want my data, ask me for consent. Because everyone wants to be asked, at least. And the companies have the duty to explain in a simple form what they do with our data.
London.
Hello.
Hi, Jen.
Hello.
Tanguy.
This is Tanguy. Good morning.
Hi, this is Aaron. And is that Emma as well?
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Hi, Emma.
Well, first of all, good morning, everyone. As you have seen, the rapporteur on the Libe committee has released a draft report. I think there are some clarifications, but the bottom line is that it looks like companies will again be caught between a rock and a hard stone. I wonder, in other words, if this is not a sort of a political maneuver to make sure that bottom line is that the draft of Mrs. Reding is finally considered as a very acceptable piece of work. Any other comments or reactions?
Yes, this is Stockholm. If I could to tell you about a very interesting seminar that I went to yesterday discussing Albrecht's report. There were representatives from Ericsson and IBM among the speakers. And basically all the speakers were calling for a future-proof approach. And they criticized a lot the concepts of consent, the right to be forgotten, and profiling.
The draft regulation in itself was heavily criticized. There would be a lot of amendments circulating from many stakeholders, from the private companies world, etc. Mr. Albrecht has now made his position, but of course he needs to be also listening on a listening mode of the other members of the parliament. Nous voyons les textes, nous les anticipons pour les besoins de nos clients. Parfois, évidemment, on est conscient du fait qu'un texte ne fonctionne pas ou risque en tout cas d'avoir des conséquences tout à fait préjudiciables. Il est nécessaire d'avoir un certain niveau de réglementation, mais en avoir trop risque en effet d'étrangler quelque part le développement de certaines choses.
Oui, bonjour, je voudrais vérifier un taxi pour 15 heures. Sur le chemin. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir. Dans 2 minutes.
Ok, merci.
The recent report from the European Parliament has provoked reaction from all sides, with thousands of people weighing in on the debate. Business lawyer and data protection expert Tanguy van Overstraten, what are your concerns?
When you read, frankly, this draft regulation, part of it is very unclear, and I think not at all accessible to normal businesses. The worst case scenario is that lawyers, us, do not know what we have to advise. That will be the worst. That's a nightmare.
EU-Kommission und Parlament wollen nun zumindest versuchen, dem Internet eine digitale Demenz zu verpassen. Ein Sieg für den Datenschutz, den Unternehmen wie Facebook, Google oder Microsoft aber nicht zulassen wollen. Die Auflagen würden ganz einfach weniger Profit bedeuten.
Jetzt merke ich, okay, das war noch der leichte Teil. Jetzt fängt die eigentliche Arbeit an. Ne? Was wir da vorgelegt haben als Albrecht-Bericht, würde ich sagen, ohne Bescheidenheit, ist das beste Datenschutzgesetz, der beste Datenschutzgesetzentwurf, den die Welt in den nächsten 20 Jahren sehen wird. Aus der Datenschutzperspektive jetzt. Ne? Auch einige echt gute Innovationsansätze drin mit technischen Standards und so Zeug. Aber das war einfach nur viel Arbeit. Und jetzt fängt sozusagen der richtig harte politische Kampf an, ne, wo man eben Deals machen muss. Und das werden zum Teil auch wahrscheinlich schmutzige Deals werden. Das wird sich nicht verhindern lassen, glaube ich. Wir kommen langsam in den Kriegsmodus, habe ich das Gefühl.
So-called data protection package. First file goes to Mr. Albrecht as rapporteur. Now we open floor for discussion.
Ist es beachtenswert, dass der Kollege Albrecht auf über 220 Seiten es geschafft hat, einen Einfluss auf die europäische Datenschutzgesetzgebung zu nehmen und durchaus auch kreative, ob ich damit immer einverstanden bin, ist etwas anderes, Ideen in diese Diskussion einzubringen und somit durchaus seinen Stempel schon hinterlassen hat bei der Entwicklung der Datenschutzgesetzgebung Europas.
And we must make sure that whatever we come up with here, not only is the rapporteur remembered in history, but also what we come up with is itself sustainable for at least another 15 years.
Deshalb kann ein zu extremer Datenschutz eben auch dazu führen, dass es zu Nachteilen für den Bürger kommt, schlechtere Versicherungsbedingungen, teurere Kredite.
Datenschutz darf auch nicht überfrachtet werden, damit es nicht unanwendbar wird. Insofern da schon mal der Hinweis, dass wir sehr viele dieser Regelungen vorhaben, rauszustreichen.
Für eine Zeit lang war es so, dass viele Leute gesagt haben, super, junger Mensch in der Europapolitik, ist ja alles super. Und von dieser Euphorie ist man dann auch so ein bisschen getragen. Ne? Also da kann man viel mit erreichen. So, jetzt ist es schon so, auch ich habe das Gefühl, wo mir jetzt auch diese Aufgabe zugestanden wurde, ja? Als ich jetzt gestern den Bericht dann der Presse vorgestellt habe und danach bin ich zu so Lobbyisten von Tech America hingegangen und habe mit denen darüber geredet. Da habe ich dann echt schon wie so, also habe ich wirklich gehört, wie die Wölfe die Zähne fletschen, um mich danach zu zerreißen. So, ne? Und das ist so ein bisschen jetzt diese Anspannungssituation, die jetzt gerade passiert. Ich habe schon den Eindruck, dass ich schon, glaube ich, jetzt härter angepackt werde so, und die Leute einen wirklich in die Mangel nehmen.
First of all, congratulations. Well done. You have really done a gorgeous work. You know, they start.
Yeah.
They start. I think it starts now to be on the mind of the people and the discussions everywhere. You did a very good work in the press.
Yeah, we tried to really
in
explain.
Germany. Have you seen that? The media will be important because the pressure of the lobbies is so.
And they are all awake now. They all know about the press.
Now the game is starting really.
And they are speaking with all the parliamentarians around, and they make them crazy. This is what I see.
Yeah. People who don't know the file in detail and don't know the story also of the whole process and the fundament are now proposing amendments on behalf of different individual stakeholders who have a particular interest.
You have how many amendments so far?
We just started. I mean, it will be until the 27th of February that on both files amendments can be sent and tabled. Yeah.
I think it's very good that you stay with end of February. I think it's a long time because the amendments are already written. So.
Yeah. Certain member states in the council, they will try to stop the directive. And I'm very grateful that...
who do you think would like to stop the directive?
Well, I think we know the usual suspects.
Okay, you will tell me later.
I will tell you later. But
okay.
that's why it's very important, Commissioner, that we have your full support. And I'm very grateful that you were so outspoken also about this package approach.
I see tomorrow and on Thursday the Ministers of the Interior. And on Thursday evening and on Friday the Ministers of Justice on this subject. See you later.
So we need to be careful the word we use. You see what I mean?
Of course, yeah.
That's my thinking. Okay. So, hi.
Good morning.
Yes,
of course. We are supposed to meet
Perfect,
today.
yeah.
Is that all right for you?
Yeah, that's all
okay.
right.
Maybe we can go on the other side of the room.
Yeah, I just have to tell the colleague from...
okay.
Diana?
We've got ourselves a barrier, so the sound should be okay now.
I think you are a lawyer too.
Yeah.
In fact, I have been involved in data protection for more than 15 years, I would
Okay.
say.
Yeah.
I'm a lawyer, so
Yeah.
I'm representing corporations. So I just want you to know on which side I would say I am.
Okay.
And well, I can tell you I've been involved in this kind of matters, you probably know that, in relation to one company I will not name, but a very famous case.
Okay.
They were really taken between the very difficult position. They cannot decide today, I will violate, let's say, US law to comply with EU law or vice versa.
Right. My impression is really that for those cases where you really feel in between, you should find technical solutions to just separate.
But you cannot, you will not be able as a company to know that in advance. You are taken suddenly by surprise, I would say, by an order from an authority. And your system is in place. You have data centers maybe in Asia, in America and in Europe. And those data centers, they talk to each other for this disaster recovery purpose. And you have no other choice.
If you're a global acting pharmaceutical company exporting pharmaceuticals everywhere, there are all of these states have different rules on the security of those pharmaceuticals. So you're always in the case to send different packages to different member states. So to find technical solutions how to adopt to this market if you want to act on the market by being compliant to their legal provisions. Of course, that's not the word we want to go back to. But on the other side,
I was about to say
on the other side, we have a development by globalization and digitalization, which is just, instead of finding common rules, a race to the bottom. And that cannot be accepted by consumers and citizens also, you know. That would mean that you change society in a way saying, okay, it doesn't matter if we live in a society like China. People don't want that.
So to summarize, I think, if I take your point, is that by adding this provision, you create a trigger to force somehow these countries to start and to accelerate, in fact, what they are doing
That's what we
trying
want
to find
create.
Yes, okay.
That's what we want to. But
I hope you will succeed.
I fully understand your dilemma, but this dilemma would otherwise be on the back of the citizens. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
I think everybody is aware that the lobby on this file is one of the most intensive that we've seen for a long time.
This has been the most heavily lobbied piece of legislation in recent years. Why is it causing so much stir and interest?
It is important to understand that European companies are a major part of this growing internet economy. Some of the most successful global internet companies to date are European.
Mais oublions que c'est Microsoft qui parle. La philosophie générale du texte, c'est on donne plein de nouveaux droits aux data subjects, ce qui est très bien. Mais de l'autre côté, les entreprises doivent aussi avoir pas seulement des devoirs, mais aussi des nouveaux droits.
Europa wil al onze privégegevens beter beschermen, maar tussen droom en wet staan lobbyisten.
Thanks a lot.
Jan, drüben sitzen schon einige und warten auf uns.
Yeah, difficult time, huh? My view.
Traditionally, the way lobbying works in Brussels is that each company has a voice. Big companies can influence a bit more, smaller companies can influence a little bit less, but everyone knows who everybody is. And what's happened in this case is that the big companies have been lobbying very energetically in their own name, which is fine, but they've also mobilized their trade associations in order to give themselves an amplified voice. And then on top of that, you also have so-called independent think tanks with very unclear funding resources. And this level of untransparency is unheard of in European politics. And the sad thing is that by the time this is finished, the whole way in which interest representation in Brussels functions is going to have been fundamentally changed for the worst.
It's in total almost 4,000 amendments for both files. Pretty impressive. We are to hear, of course, our rapporteurs. Let's hear from Mr. Albrecht for the regulation. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I perhaps can just start by saying that for a Green, so many dead trees are really hard to accept. I am, although that there are many amendments, still optimistic that we will fulfill our work, that we will succeed with a common position covering a broad consensus.
Also wenn ich mir überlege, wie lange es schon gedauert hat, die Verordnung durchzuarbeiten, die 100 Artikel hatte, und jetzt kriegen wir sozusagen zu jedem Artikel 10 oder 20 Änderungsanträge. Ja, super, ne? Das wird eine riesen Herausforderung. Also wir werden viele Sitzungen mit denen machen müssen und bis ins Detail durchdiskutieren, wie konkret die Formulierungen aussehen müssen, damit wir am Ende nicht dastehen und plötzlich überstimmt werden oder plötzlich etwas zustimmen müssen, wo klar ist, also das können wir eigentlich nicht vertreten.
Please give trust to the shadow rapporteurs leading you through these negotiations, otherwise we will not manage to do that.
A report to the Justice Ministers on the 8th of
I think we should make a difference to applying processing personal data of citizens of people residing in the Union and outside the Union. I don't see the necessity that we have a controller or processor in the European Union and fulfilling all these demandings out of the regulation outside the Union.
If you clearly have here a cloud service which is only meant to be for Chinese citizens and it's based in Europe, but it only affects from the start offering of services for Chinese people, it should not be covered by the regulation.
That would be legally, in my view, impossible. We cannot have secondary legislation which excludes the application of a fundamental right inside the territory of the European Union.
If I send an email, or somebody from the US sends an email to China, and through the internet there are different servers and it goes through a European server, in that moment these companies all have to apply European law? I mean,
I don't care if it's not citizens' data that goes through the server, but the fact that the server is here.
If they are processing inside the European Union, in the territory of the European Union, then I don't think it's in our disposition to say inside the European Union these legal principles do not apply.
I mean, I agree with you. It'd be great if it became a sort of commercial gold standard. But on the other hand, we are talking jobs and outsourcing and driving jobs offshore. I think it would be slightly absurd if we found that we were moving the goalposts like this to say that we are setting ourselves up to safeguard the data protection rights of Chinese or African or whatever people. I think that's not the purpose. This is a new frontier, so it does raise new questions.
I didn't want to open up that legal debate. We are having it open right now. The exclusion of the application of the Fundamental Rights Charter inside the European Union, for me, is a no-go. So if you are still willing to change that, we have to ask the legal service for a full opinion and then decide on that basis, which will mean for sure that we have to postpone the vote already now.
So let's try to find a modus vivendi, which is...
Jan Albrecht needs to produce a compromise which is acceptable for his own constituency, otherwise he won't get elected. And at the same time, needs to be acceptable to the bigger political groups in the European Parliament. And then he needs to take that and negotiate a compromise with the Council. The balance that he needs to achieve it's potentially unachievable. Too much compromise and he loses his own constituency, Too little compromise, he loses the entire dossier, and some sort of deal is negotiated between the big political groups, and he's isolated and will remain isolated for the rest of his political career.
We're never finished with it.
When I started to engage into this process, I thought I would witness a legislation process based more on content. Whereas after 1 year and a half, the whole process has turned into a very rough battle. And in the middle, there are the European institutions that should guarantee that a democratic process is respected. The technology is changing the world, and when there is no chance to see all these thousands of amendments converging into an agreed or agreeable final text, then the legislative model has failed, because it cannot guarantee a reform in an adequate amount of time.
First of all, ask Vice President Reding for her comments.
Yes, thank you, Alan, and thank you for the hard and determined work on this compromise. International press has written shortly ago, I quote, "The whole world is watching what we are doing here, because we are setting gold standards for data protection, and we should not underestimate this element in a time when some are tempted to undermine the weight of the EU on the international scene."
Could I just thank the Vice President for her comments. The report which we are presenting to you today seeks general support for several key aspects of the proposed regulation.
Turbūt visi sutinkame, kad ES duomenų apsaugos reforma yra reikalinga, tačiau sprendimų ir tinkamo balanso ieškojimas neturi būti vykdomas skubotai ar neapgalvotai.
There is absolutely no advantage to be gained from binding ourselves prematurely to a text which many of us acknowledge needs much more work, and there are risks, significant risks in doing so.
Eine Festlegung des Ministerrates im Sinne eines General Support erscheint uns als zu verfrüht.
There are some colleagues who do not like so much the rights of the individuals to be put in practice, who thought that it would be good if we could take a little more time and discuss a little more and wait a little more. I tell to them very clearly, no, we don't have time. And we have already taken a lot of time, because it was in January 2012 that I put my proposal on the table. Now we are 18 months later. Let me just recall you one thing. When the ministers of the Interior limited the civil liberties online of our citizens, that was on the Data Protection Directive, they took 6 months. So if we augment the rights of the citizens, and if you have already worked 18 months on this, where is the equilibrium? It seems that we do not need time to eliminate the rights, but we need a lot of time to give the rights. Now, I don't agree on this, and Alan doesn't either. We think that it is our responsibility as political leaders to get these rights in place, the rule of law, and the basic rights of the individual, as they are enshrined in the Charter of Fundamental Rights, are our compass in everything we do. And if we don't do that, it will be at a disadvantage of our societies and of the future generations.
Il est très difficile à ce stade-ci de savoir si oui ou non le règlement va être adopté et surtout sous quelle forme. Une entreprise investit évidemment pour pouvoir adopter certaines règles, pour se conformer à la loi. Mais évidemment, quand ce contexte est encore en pleine évolution, c'est évidemment très difficile de pouvoir s'adapter à quelque chose qui est en fait une moving target, une cible mouvante. Et ce que craignent avant tout, c'est que le côté prise de risque, une entreprise le fait du point de vue d'un entrepreneur, mais ne le fait pas du point de vue du respect d'une loi. Au contraire, les entreprises tentent de respecter les lois au mieux de leurs possibilités, mais si ces lois sont incompréhensibles ou inadéquates ou irréalistes, elles sont placées alors dans des situations totalement impossibles. Ça, c'est une réalité.
Edward Snowden, criminal or hero? I know, it depends on who you ask, but this is clear. He is willing to offer up more of what he knows.
The hacker who made headlines around the world with the most shocking and extensive intelligence revelations in history. Edward Snowden revealed that secret surveillance activities went far beyond what anyone thought possible.
Companies like Google, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft got together with the NSA and provided direct access to the back ends of all communicating systems.
I think that the public is owed an explanation of the motivations behind the people who make these disclosures. That's a fundamentally dangerous thing to democracy.
The Guardian's editor-in-chief testified before Parliament that only a fraction of the leaked files have been revealed.
It's about 1% of what we were given.
Only 1% of the information in those files has now gone public.
Yes.
The EU Justice Commissioner has spoken about the leaks from Edward Snowden and says that new legislation must be put in place to protect the privacy of EU citizens.
Anybody who uses digital equipment is put under some form of surveillance. And that seems to me is something which cannot happen without consent. It cannot happen without the consent of populations. So my message to the lawmakers is, please protect us.
the PRISM case was a wake-up call. A wake-up call we have shown to everybody in this chamber how urgent it is that we proceed with a solid piece of legislation, as well in the private sector, as well in the sector of law enforcement. So let's not miss that opportunity.
Well, thank you.
Wir schwimmen. Wir schwimmen, also die Sache, die hat uns genützt.
Ja, ja, absolut. Und auch hier.
Ach ja, gut. Ich habe den Amerikanern gedankt für ihre Hilfe.
Das ist aber gemein. Aber da müssen sie durch, ne?
Edward Snowden's revelations are definitely a game changer in that process. Now we discovered that data became not only power in itself, but also a weapon that can be used against people. On corporate surveillance, state build their own surveillance, and one enhances the other. So it's not like you can say, well, we should look at the state, but it's really okay for people to do business with our data. Not really. It's all the same game. Surveillance is really not about knowing your intimate secrets. It's not about knowing how you look like naked or with whom you spend your nights. This is really like little stuff that nobody cares about. Surveillance really is about managing populations, managing people.
On 28, we now followed the ideas to shorten dramatically the duties.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay. What I see now is like half of the paragraph is gone, and I just wonder why.
This was obviously the wish to reach an agreement, and that is the reason why we changed it. So, but then also paragraph 1 can stay as proposed?
Paragraph 1 can stay as proposed, and our big step since we delete paragraph 4.
Okay.
We can move.
Thank you for that. Then let's move to Article 31. Agreed?
Yep.
Agreed. So 35, designation of data protection officer.
I would still ask for the deletion of an enterprise employing 250 persons or more.
If the majority wants to get it out, I will swallow the bitter pill.
What are the bigger groups think about the last part of paragraph 2? Is there any way to compromise on that?
Just a full stop after establishment.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then I insist on chief. Either the one way or the other, we will find a compromise. I insist on it. Compromise is possible. Go for it.
Take chief. Okay, fine. And I can go also make this this concession and also agree to that to delete the final part of the sentence. Okay?
Okay. All right. Next. 79 sanctions.
Establishes it as we need it.
As we need it. Give them the tools.
If there's agreement, then there's agreement.
Okay.
Okay. We still have an hour and 15 minutes.
There's a new group in the European Parliament. This is the Where's My Amendment group. When we came into our prep meeting earlier today, they said, okay, and which are the amendments that are left over? And we said, there aren't any. And they said, like, what? And it was like, okay, yeah, but where's my amendment? It's gone, you know.
It's part of the deal.
Yeah.
My impression is that on all compromises, almost all of the groups agree completely.
It is a political agreement, and we can really be proud of what we have achieved, not only because of the huge workload, but because we really managed to have consensus between all the political forces in the House on an issue which is highly complicated, but which is of utmost importance for our public, for the European citizens.
Really, thank you all for being here with us. I mean, I don't know how much hours we spent on reaching such an agreement. Okay, good. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Bravo.
Please open the window. I need fresh air, please. I already said I do what I should do now.
It's Jan. Hi. Fine. We made it. We made it. Yes. I don't know. Alter.
Ich hätte vorhin fast geheult. Echt? Was du wie du Schlussworte gesagt hast. Die war echt so, oh, er hat ein Monster-Himalaya-Berg vom Herzen fällt. We did it.
Ich fasse es nicht.
Alter, und du hast echt alle an Bord. Google wird sogar für das Ding stimmen am Ende. Die sind bei 26, das heißt, aber am Ende tragen sie es mit. Das musst du erst mal hinkriegen bei so einem Paket, ey, Alter!
Das ist total krass. Aber das Einzige, was ich eben gedacht habe, es ist schon ein bisschen eng, dass wir auf 21 nur mit Rot, Rot, Grün, Gelb fahren.
Also es sollte klappen.
Es gab tatsächlich einige Zugeständnisse, die wir machen mussten, aber die liegen vor allen Dingen da, wo sie nicht den Datenschutzstandard berühren. Auf der anderen Seite haben wir die explizite Zustimmung. Wir haben bei dem Löschungsrecht dazu gewonnen, dass wir sowas wie ein Recht auf Vergessenwerden haben, und wir haben Sanktionen bis zu 5% des Jahresweltumsatzes eines Unternehmens. Das kann in die Milliardenhöhe gehen. Wenn wir das tatsächlich bekommen, dann wäre das ein Riesengewinn. Wir sind an der Stelle wirklich ziemlich gut aufgestellt, und da wäre es jetzt wirklich doof, wenn wir das riskieren würden, dass uns das im Plenum an dieser Stelle, in diesem Moment weggehauen wird.
Eine der wichtigen Fragen betrifft ja trotzdem weiterhin den Hauptakteur in dieser ganzen Welt, in die Snowden uns Einblick verschafft hat, nämlich den Geheimdienst oder die Geheimdienste. Also ist es nicht ein bisschen eine Gefahr, dass wir jetzt suggerieren, Datenschutz machen wir hier perfekt, treiben wir voran?
Ist noch mal eine wichtige Frage auch für eure Kommunikation. Was wir mit dieser Verordnung machen können, und das muss man vorne wegstellen, ist, wir können verhindern, dass Unternehmen wie Microsoft oder Google oder Yahoo hier in Europa Daten sammeln von uns und die dann einfach in Drittstaaten wie die USA schicken und dort der NSA sozusagen zur Verfügung stellen, ohne dass es hier in Europa dafür eine Rechtsgrundlage gibt. Insofern hätten wir es vielleicht über den Umweg der Wirtschaft irgendwann geschafft, auch diese überbordende Überwachungsgesetzgebung ein Stück weit wieder einzugrenzen.
Hey Sarah.
Hi.
So, now we try to finish it.
Yeah.
Viel Erfolg. Es tut was Gutes für Europa.
Das machen wir. We'll do our best. Hello. Hi. You know, on 21 and 80, we need the majority of 31 votes, and we only have 30.
It's just on these two articles. Hey Wim, so D-Day, yeah, we have to finalize now. It's but it's
voting on block?
We're voting most of it on block, not everything.
So we can eat tonight?
Yeah, hopefully. Ja, nein, ich verstehe es. Ich verstehe es wirklich. Es ist, wie es ist, ja. So you will be with us the whole time? Okay, good. Because it could take a...
I will not leave you alone there.
No. My God, okay.
After heavy and commendable work by shadows and political groups, we're voting on the data protection as a package, as we always intended to, with the exception of the compromises, which are going to be voted separately. Now voting on the compromises en bloc. Please do vote. Did everybody vote? Yes. Okay, now the vote is closed. 52 plus, 0 against, so it's adopted. Thank you for the huge effort. We are aware that it was a whole lot of work. Now we move to the compromises which were separate. Compromise 6, voting. The vote is open. Now the vote is closed. What do we have? 49 plus, 6 against, 0 abstentions. It's okay. Now compromise 21. Again, electronic check. Voting now, compromise 21. The vote is open. Now closed. What do we have? 36 plus, 20 against, 0 abstentions. It's adopted. Now, compromise 43A.
That was
the vote is open. 52 plus, 4 against, 0 abstentions. It's adopted. We're voting now on the adoption of a mandate for a negotiation. Is it right? Now the vote is open. 51 plus, 1 minus, 3 abstentions. Thank you, Mr. Albrecht. I guess that hand that has been just given by the committee is an illustration of the recognition of the hard work that you have carried out so far. I've been just reported that considering that the expectation was a lengthy voting, sandwiches have been ordered in advance.
That was clever. Haben wir geschafft. Thank you.
Der große Albrecht.
Danke.
Guten Erfolg für die nächsten Monate.
Danke. Jetzt müssen die Mitgliedstaaten liefern. Ne?
Oh,
ja.
das wird schwer, ne?
Ja, das schaffen wir. I don't know what to say. So much blood in it, you know.
We were so good.
Sweat, tears and blood. Oh my God. Axel.
Das haben wir doch jetzt gut hingekriegt.
Und besser, viel besser als ich dachte. Es läuft doch alles. Sehr gut. Also. So, thank you all. And I would say cheers and on good negotiations with the council. Thank you. Cheers. Of course.
I should hide my sandwich.
Okay,
Perfect.
you will send it. Okay.
Yeah, okay, ciao. You have a life again. Yeah, at least a bit of impact.